explain your journey to us. So how did you get started and how did you journey to become the woman that you are today?
Wow, that's quite a story, Terrain. I have a background in sales and marketing and worked for Pepsi and Coke. And somewhere along the line, I got very frustrated and I felt dissatisfied with working in the corporate world and doing a 9 to 5 kind of job. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go work for myself. Coming from an entrepreneurial background, it was actually quite easy. My first business was quite a success. I started a web development company and I got bought out within a year by a publishing arm that wanted to add it to their portfolio. And that was very exciting. And then I went on to just have multiple businesses in absolutely diverse areas because I had an interest in them. And once you have the formula for setting up a company, it's a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, I failed a lot, but that's also the path of the success, making those failures and transcending through them.
I know when we spoke, because we spoke, for those listening, we spoke a little bit before officially doing this, and you did mention the failures. What kind of lessons did you learn from those setbacks, and how did it prepare you for any future success that you would have?
That's a really good question. We often fear failure, and then when it happens, we think that it's the worst thing ever. But there is so much pleasure, so many lessons, and so many learnings in failing that I think it should be a regular part and a regular accepted celebration in life when you fail. I always say never give in, never give in, never, 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 never give in. Um, but sometimes you just need to give in to that failure and accept that everyone fails in life at any one point or another. You're going to suffer through failure. And some of these will be monumental failures, and some of them will be just little disappointments. But that feeling is always the same. And I feel the problem is that most people associate failure with complete defeat. And I can relate to this because I fell countless times in many aspects of my life, including my entrepreneurial events. And sometimes I used to think I was get this, a professional failure. I just felt I was failing at everything. It's only when I started learning these lessons that I realized that sometimes we do have to suffer through many failures to realize the importance of it. Um, I also learnt that you realize that it's not the end of the road. When you do fail, it sometimes feels it's the end of the line. It feels like everything you hope for and dream for is now completely out of your reach. And it actually takes a massive emotional toll on you. And it can break you, sometimes physically, mentally, and spiritually. The other big takeaway I've learned from failure is that it helps to redefine your priorities in life. It'll either make you or it'll break you, but it can't make you actually until it breaks you. So that's the tricky part of understanding that once you break, that's really when you'll start seeing some successes. And having this reframe, this redefinition of priorities is part of the crucial step for overcoming the failures. A final point I think that gives you that you learn and you go when you go through the journey is, and this is quite funny actually, but I feel that failure actually shapes what you value. It's actually quite funny because through each successive failure in my life, I felt my values were reshaped. And over time, they completely morphed. What I probably valued 20 years ago, 10 years ago, is definitely not the same thing I value today. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make, I feel, when I've been working and coaching with entrepreneurs and individuals, is that they value the wrong things when they're trying to succeed. So it's really, really important to be very specific about what is it that you want? What is your personal vision? What really matters to you? And what do you have to do first to achieve that personal vision? You see, when you value the wrong things, success can be fleeting. It's actually easier to give up. But when your values are in order and you spent some time, maybe you've sat down with a piece of paper and you've worked it out, and you're very clear on what your values are, your priorities are, your life vision is, I feel you can happily succeed rather than succeeding to be happy.
And I will agree with that. And I always, because we always speak of our goals of or our success as a journey. And I love using this metaphor where if the end goal is for you to develop a successful business, that means every time you fail, you should just look at it as it's a pit stop. You're stopping to refuel. Either you're refueling yourself to continue going, or you're going to refuel the car that is driving you down that path of success. Because if it's a true journey, there has to be stops along that journey where you have to, as you put it, reevaluate your outlook, reevaluate what you think is important, and just to refuel. Because it'd be naive of us to think that we can continue down a path and there won't be any hiccup. There won't be a stop in the road, there won't be a hole in the road, or there won't be a fork in the road where we can either go left, right, or continue straight. And I think that's all that it is, just us reevaluating ourselves, reevaluating what is important, and still having the goal in mind. And you raise a good point saying that you will learn more from the setback. I remember every single time that I've had a setback, and I think many of us do, and I would be afraid to think that the reason why I didn't continue forward wasn't necessarily the failure itself. It was the fear that maybe I wasn't going to be as successful as I planned to be. Have you ever experienced a situation when you're opening all these businesses, when you're down the path of being successful, you thought, what if this person judges me and their judgment is so impactful that I don't want to continue the process of being successful, the process of fulfilling my dreams? Have you experienced a thought like that?
Many times, I think it's a very valid point that many of us experience and feel, in that I much of my life experienced imposter syndrome, which is similar to what you're talking about, in that I would feel that I was doing the wrong thing, or I wasn't good enough to do this, even though I was doing it. I was successful and I was going quite far with it. And it derails you when you have those feelings. And it's really important to sit down and assert within yourself that you do know what you're talking about, you have the knowledge, you have the expertise, and it's important that we're true to ourselves, to value ourselves and ensure that these feelings don't come into our lives.
For those who don't know, what is imposter syndrome and how did you overcome that?
Imposter syndrome is when you feel that you are not successful and have the ability and the skills and the expertise to do whatever you're doing. A common phenomena I feel more in women these days than men. And I wonder if it's just an environmental and a cultural thing for women. And I talk to many female business entrepreneurs who are so successful, doing so well, and yet they just think, oh, I'm going to get found out. And I remember Michelle Obama talking about this, and she was having all these accolades, and she said secretly she wondered if she was actually an imposter. So it's something that creeps up in all of us. How do you overcome it? You really truly have to go within and assert yourself and love yourself, big yourself up to make yourself feel good. And I don't mean just make it till you fake it, but do some deep work in understanding where these insecurities, feelings, thoughts, um, patterns come from, and get rid of them. We're so spoiled these days with personal development tools. We have mirror work, we have affirmations, we have deep inner child therapy, we have simple feel good, and have a tribe of people that bring you up and support you and nurture you. And often when you are on that journey, I'm hoping that you don't have much time for these thoughts, because the journey is so beautiful and joyous that you get wrapped up on it. And when you're in flow, it's hard for these thoughts to come into play, because you just don't have the time.
See, I wonder how difficult that is because it goes back to that saying, and you touched on it, fake it till you make it. Or you hear some other people will say, many of us will say that I find support more so from those who are strangers to me versus my friends. So if you have these two phenomenons that's occurring, as there's many of us who step outside of our house and they immediately put on a mask. And I'm not talking about like a Halloween mask or makeup. They're putting on a persona that necessarily isn't them. So in a way, they are pretending, maybe to a degree, not to be who they truly are. And if they're not getting the proper support from those close to them, they will seek it elsewhere. And I will look at the relationship that you and I have, right? Very honest, very forthcoming. We've talked about a number of things before we spoke today, and I would say that the energy between you and I, it didn't seem like there was any pretending. There wasn't any of this, let me say the right things to develop this relationship. But you and I are at a point in our lives, a point in our careers, a point in our business where we know what we want. We've been there, we've done that. We know how to communicate what we want. But what if there's someone who doesn't know what we know and who necessarily isn't looking within because they're so used to putting on that mask? They're so used to looking to people who don't necessarily know them and pretending to be a way that is going to increase the likelihood of them being liked and accepted.
That's really interesting that you say that. Wearing masks has become something very easy for us to do to hide our real true self. And in a world of massive expectations, we are sometimes forced to be someone who we're not. And again, this comes down to having inner confidence, inner strength, and that thing that we all call self esteem, and being really happy in your skin and being able to live your life how you want to live it. So that's the first point you touched on. And very early on, you asked me that sometimes we find that strangers um, give us more feedback and love and support than our friends do. And again, I wanted to bring that word expectation in. That is it that we expect so much more from our loved ones, our friends, our family, and sometimes it's strangers that you can resonate with, that get you. You're working the same vibe with them, and that they're able to support you, um, and not shoot down your dreams and not judge you. Um, and I also think that I know this sounds sad, but I think it's true that in life, I think it's important to understand that the majority of people are selfish. Your friends may not openly support you because they usually don't care enough about your goals if they can't benefit from them. I think that's just human behavior. And I think the minute you start to take acceptance of that and look to improve your life, your goals, your success in any way whatsoever, that's going to empower you and make you feel good. Because at the end of the day, you've got to build your best life for you and you alone.
I think you're correct. Because I've actually, it's not that I think, I know that you're correct based on my experience the more successful I became, you start to lose people along the way. Not necessarily, well, in some cases, because you are changing, but in some cases, it's because those who were there at the beginning, they are not changing. And I will expand on that. It's when you're kids and maybe you've experienced, you're running around, you're carefree, there's the simplest of things will make you feel happy. But as you get older and you become a source of a provider, meaning that, you have to provide for your family, provide for your potential mates, provide for yourself because you're no longer under your parents' wing, you're changing. And I think sometimes, and this goes back to the point of personal development, everyone is going to develop at different speeds. Some people, if it's a race, some people are walking, some people are crawling, some people are running, some people are jogging, and some people it's a sprint from the opening whistle to the closing whistle. You will leave people behind just because you are progressing at a speed that is superior to them, and you're climbing to a ledge, or your peak is going to be at a level where maybe they couldn't understand or fathom. I know you mentioned to me that you've had some business ventures. Have you experienced this where there's some people that maybe it created, the more successful you became, it created some distance? And were you surprised at the distance that it created between you and maybe those people around you when you're earlier on in your career and maybe in your life?
Yeah. Um, I was very surprised very early on that as I became more successful and started running multiple businesses, there would be an element of jealousy coming out with certain people. I'm female. I'm Indian. Very unusual 20 years ago to be a female founder. I should have been sitting at home making babies, and here I was traveling the world, having a whale of a time, having amazing experiences, and being a founder in strange countries. I've gone to India on my own and set up a software company, trying to understand the culture, the norms, and everything on my own. And that's taken tremendous courage, but I've absolutely been exhilarated by the ride. And during this time, I noticed that I would sometimes get the cold shoulder from family and friends. And these are people that I thought would be the biggest supporters in my projects. And I think the reality is, and this is what I learned, is that when we begin to be bold and we start to step into our dreams and our passions and our own empowerment, we're actually taking a chance at being loved or being shunned. And this is a time when it's really important for us to protect our attitude and our frame of mind, especially in business, because your attitude is very much your altitude. And I've always found that when I've understood why people are the way they are, it's just allowed me to forgive them and move past what I feel is really holding me back from truly fulfilling my own life's purpose. And I think it's a sad reality, isn't it? They either become intimidated by us, or we're expressing a side of ourselves they wish they could have, but for some reason feel they can't. And maybe they simply don't get it, I'm thinking. Being in business is a mega thing. You've got staff, you have stakeholders, you've borrowed money, you're working crazy hours. It's a massive risk. And I feel that sometimes people just didn't get it. They'd be wondering how I could be so courageous, so vulnerable, open, and bold. And they're probably happy living their life playing safe.
Like I look at you and I think I've the amount of back and forth conversation I've had, there's some people that I've known for years that I've talked to less. And it's not that I guess in a way you can say we're neglecting each other. It's just my goals are different. My goals continue to evolve, and you know what, you're someone now, and I'll say this for everyone listening, because I think I may have hinted towards this. You're someone that's in my network now, so you are who you hang out with, and if you want to be successful, you have to hang out with successful people. I remember the day I bought my house, and I invited a few people over, and one person said boldly, "How come you could afford a house and I can't?"
Ouch.
Right? And within a couple of months, the friendship was over. But you look back and you say that, you know what, you would, and it goes back maybe to the expectation. Maybe, you know what, it was inappropriate for me to expect someone that was my friend to be supportive of me. But if the person is truly your friend, I don't think that's a wrong expectation to have.
Yeah, we learn these things in life, and I'm a big fan of forgiveness. Let it go and allow people to have their own journeys. Um, and you talk about having a specific network, and I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of finding your tribe, because there's nothing better than authentic and compassionate relationships. Um, Having people around us who share our commonalities and possess the traits we want to aspire to. And I think it's so important to spend time and energy with people that you value, you admire, who you have mutual appreciation for, and a connection and a vibe, because that's so important in relationships and connections, isn't it?
What kind of tribe do you have now living where you are? Because I would assume the network and the tribe is different where you are versus Toronto, for example.
Um, we're global citizens now. We're connected so easily. I have so many people on a screen, on a Zoom, in my living room, in my office, going on walks with me. I listen to podcasts from all around the world. Terrain, I've listened to yours. You're in my ears. I feel you're with me when you're having conversations with people. I'm listening. So I do have a network that's very international, very diverse, and people that I genuinely appreciate the connection with, and they're all different. And I think this is the interesting thing about where we are, that we can really appreciate different types of people and learn from them, be stimulated with them, um, so that we're not looking at the world just through our own perspective. Because I think when you have a different group of fellow humans, there's some commonality, but there's something which is quite different. And that's sort of the people that you bring into your tribe and nurture the relationships with.
Do you feel a sense of, you did touch on that you're a woman and that you're an Indian woman. Do you feel a sense of freedom now career wise? Because you did make a point that at a time you felt that, you know, maybe some people looked at you should be home making babies. And that's probably a difficult time for you to experience that. But do you feel a sense of freedom now, or is that thought still in the back of your mind?
I certainly feel a sense of freedom now. I have many accomplishments and much joy and satisfaction, together with contentment in my life. And that gives you a sense of, well, you know what? I did it my way. I think cultural norms, female entrepreneurism has certainly evolved over the last 20 years. When I started out in business, there were very few women in business. If I went to business meetings, it was mainly men, pale white men, not multicultural people, and it was sort of thought that I would be working from my bedroom running a business. Today, it's very accepted, let me say. But in those days, if you ran a proper business, you had a secretary, you had a little team. You didn't just do this bootstrapping stuff. And the world of entrepreneurism has radically changed for the better, I'm happy to say, to the extent that we see more and more people have a side hustle, involved in some freelancing work, or have actually set up little businesses that they've nurtured and grown with. And it's phenomenal to see that happening and be witness to that in today's day and age.
So do you feel now that, like, I'll take it towards the next generation, like a young Indian woman looking at you, do you feel like that you're a source of inspiration for that next generation because you did it at a time, like you mentioned, where there weren't many people that looked like you in that field? There wasn't a lot of maybe female entrepreneurs or definitely Indian women entrepreneurs. Do you feel a sense of joy that you could stand tall and be an inspiration to the next generation of Indian women who say that, you know what, I want to be like her because she did it at a time that maybe there wasn't as many resources, but now she's showing me how to do it?
Actually, I don't think so. You know why? Because they don't realize how hard it was. They live in a time, an environment, a business culture where you're empowered, accepted, given grants and funding for any business venture you have. I think a lot of people from my own generation acknowledge that more and like are in awe that I did it. It's just different generations and different areas.
You're right, because I'm guessing the grants, was there times where I would just Google search any grants for business owners, and I guess I was innocent or naive to think that they were always around, but you're right, maybe they weren't. Maybe the grants available to me now weren't available when you started out.
I think they've always been lots of opportunities for business finance. I see more now. Either I'm more educated and more aware and more connected to have the network. I'm more successful, so people will invest in me, or the actual culture and the business environment has completely changed. I certainly see more opportunities now for business finance, and it's readily available. And you've got peer-to-peer networks. The digital revolution has changed things. You're connecting to people, you're trusting people much faster than you did many years ago when you had to physically meet to get to know someone and then spend a considerable amount of time with that person in these things called meetings that we used to do a long time ago to actually get to know them.
Do you miss some of those face-to-face meetings?
Oh, I absolutely miss that connection. I've always said to do a deal with someone, you've got to be able to look at them in the white of their eye. And it's great doing business on a Zoom call. And I think we've all adapted to that. But I miss the chemistry, the energy, and the connection that you'd have with someone, and creating that relationship. I think it's much quicker face to face. I do feel this is here to stay. There's going to be some sort of a hybrid model, and we've all got so used to our being comfortable working from home. Those of us that are comfortable, I mean, I'm worried about the next meeting I go to. I'm pretty sure I'm going to turn up with flip flops or furry socks.
I do. I will agree. I do miss the face-to-face, and it goes back to when I give presentations. Um, I think part of the greatness of meeting face to face is that the energy, the chemistry, right? Like we give off so much just based off our body language. And I know you and I, when we had our initial conversation, I just look back and imagine if we could have did that face to face, right? Imagine the back and forth, the bouncing of ideas. Yes, we are in different parts of the world, but at least if we can, to your point, have a hybrid, those local you still meet, and those overseas or out of country you do the Zoom call. But it's definitely a different experience and a different energy. And to your point, when you can look someone in their eyes and propose something, or imagine we're having this conversation and you're sitting across from me and I'm across from you. Um, I think we would have the same amount of energy going back and forth, but just imagine how more impactful it could have been or may have been if we were just across from each other. I think that's probably what's going to be missing in the near future.
I think anything in life, it evolves, it grows. And whilst we've been able to connect globally, my coaching business changed during the pandemic, and all of a sudden I have clients all around the world. Whereas previously, my clients were all London based. I live in London predominantly, and I would be servicing my clients with visits to their office and coaching sessions face to face. To get that body language, to have that personal touch, to have that immediate rapport, comfort, trust, credibility, all the things that a business coach needs to do. But when all that stopped, my business model changed. And I think that's a good thing too, that we've evolved. And we are doing business, all of us globally, with immense ease. I mean, look at us now.
Yeah, who knows if we may have connected when we did if it wasn't for this pandemic and the situation, right? So good things are definitely coming out of it. Is there anything that you've learned recently that maybe you wish you knew earlier on in your journey?
I've learnt so much. London is a generally, and I say this lovingly and respectfully, but it's not like when it snows in Toronto, you still have massive blue skies and bright sunshine. London tends to be very dark, wet, humid, bitterly cold, and we don't have the infrastructure to deal with it because I think the climate's got colder over the years. And this year I noticed sunrises and sunsets and lots of sunshine and lots of blue skies. And I said to my colleagues, I said, "Oh, we're having a little bit of a warmer December this year, aren't we?" And they said, "No, it's always the same. You've just never noticed it." And it's been amazing. I'm a mountaineer and a trekker, um, and a daily gym goer pre-pandemic. But at the pandemic, I had to change my lifestyle, and I've started just having daily local walks. And it's been amazing to absolutely appreciate nature and actually see the seasons firsthand. Ordinarily, I'd be running to and from meeting, getting on the subway, driving somewhere, getting into a meeting, going to the gym, going for dinner. My life would be an endless list of appointments. And these days, I have my clients to service and general business appointments, but I have a lot more time for me to spend time with the people that I love and actually enjoy life. So, as the old saying goes, I've had time to smell the roses.